Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rohit Dadwal, your co-host for the webinar today. We are holding this webinar series 2020, where we try and bring to you various knowledge sharing discussions with regard to what's happening in the world of mobile marketing and advertising, especially in these challenging times. I think the word challenging has been used a lot, but it is very challenging, and I think it is very important at this point in time to make sure that people do understand how to communicate with the consumers. These times have never been witnessed in our lifetime, and I think from a topic perspective, what we wanted to bring to everybody's awareness is the responsible marketing in a time of crisis. And the topic by itself is very sensible from a marketing concept perspective, because it is really for the marketers to be responsible in terms of the communication they do with their consumers. It is like corporate social responsibility. You need to be responsible for whatever messaging you are putting together and not be looked at opportunist, but at the same time delivering a service and the right message to them. What we are going to hear in this webinar is how some of those corporate responsible marketing campaigns are addressed, the strategy and the work behind it, and how it can be sensitized for a broader audience. So before I introduce you to my guest speakers, quickly wanted to take a couple of minutes to give you an overview of MMA. Mobile Marketing Association is an industry body. We are 800 plus members across the world, and we are headquartered out of New York. Our purpose is really to help build the industry for advertising and marketing. Our prime audience is to work for the chief marketeers, helping them build stronger connections and through innovative marketing and transformation that is being brought to us while we help shape the future. Some of the priorities, as you can see on the slide, some of the ongoing challenges of the advertising world, including measurement and impact, building capabilities, and helping build inspirational use cases are things that we work on.
Sorry, Rohit.
Yes.
We haven't seen your print. We haven't seen your prints, Rohit.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, great.
So while we are building this, these are some of the programs that we have. The programs that help us build the industry. We work across the segment. We have programs with regard to attribution, measurement. We also build guidelines and best practices through industry work groups. We evangelize using Smarties and leading impact forums and CMO summits. And we also have a lot of knowledge that is shared between our partners and our members. We would like you to all engage with us. As part of our upcoming webinars, today's webinar is the responsible marketing in time of crisis. And then there is a list of other webinars that are lined up for this month. You can actually use the barcode to scan and register for some of them or all of them. We would encourage you to. And on the 15th, I'm actually starting a new series called There's No Playbook for This, with some of the leading business leaders in the marketing advertising industry. We are starting to work on a playbook of how people should try and recover from these crises. So please do join us for all these. You will find, we trust you will find all of this very useful and very encouraging. And some of the other programs that you can get access to are the programs that are available on our website. You can log on to our website or drop an email to communities at MMA Global. As a member, you can engage most of these programs that we have. With that, let me hand you over to Jessica to help you understand the engagement that we would like to drive this particular webinar.
Thank you, Rohit. So hello, everybody. Jessica from MMA Vietnam. So during the webinar, all of you can engage with the speaker with the MMA by putting questions through the control panel, like in front of you. And today we're very honored to welcome our speaker. Welcome Mr. Teejay Sonza, Regional Marketing Director Vietnam and Cambodia from Coca-Cola, and Kris Constantoulas, Chief Strategy Officer from Burnett. Thank you for all of you to joining us, and also thank you, Rohit, as well, to support MMA Vietnam to hold this webinar. And right now, we would like to have it Kris for the first presentation. Please, Rohit. Yeah, welcome, Kris.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Rohit, for the invitation to come and talk to everyone today. When they showed me the topic, responsible marketing in a time of crisis, it was a little bit daunting, to be honest. It's such a big question, and it overlaps so many different areas of business and of corporate social responsibility, of communication, but even broader, I think, is how we act as a business moving into a time where people are more conscious, more socially responsible, more worried about their futures than ever before. As an agency, we work with lots of different partners across a range of different categories. And I think the one common response that we've had from everyone that we've engaged with, everyone that we've talked to, is that, one, this is an unprecedented crisis that we are facing, and there is no playbook moving forward. So I think we're all learning as we go. The other big question I think that everyone has on their minds is what should we do? Which I think is a really valid question, because there's no precedent for this type of event. So what I'm going to try and do today is a little bit of a back to basics approach. So I'll take you through, I think, sort of how I approached this big question of how to approach responsible marketing in a time of crisis. And to do that, I took actually the word responsible and tried to understand what that meant. So what does it mean to be responsible? And then having a look at the crisis. Because we've been through times of crisis before. Businesses face crises all the time. So what is really different about this type of crisis that we're facing now, and what type of impact does that have, or relationship does that have with responsibility? And I think that intersection is really interesting, and we'll sort of move forward into an unprecedented area of behavior and some types of shifts that are not only short term, but will possibly and probably us through the long term. So with that, I'll move into my first slide. So the big question, what does it mean to be responsible? So in trying to understand that word responsible, I did what any good planner would do and went to the dictionary. So looking at the Cambridge and Merriam-Webster dictionaries, we look at the word responsible, and a few key words come out of that. So, duty, good judgment, the ability to act correctly, making important decisions, doing important things, answering for one's conduct and obligations. So these all feel very individual. It feels very human. They're all about decision making, They're all about making choices. It's all about what sacrifices do I make? And when we put that in the context of business, sometimes I think those types of questions are in conflict with the imperatives of business, the ability to deliver profits back to shareholders. And I think this is a discussion that's been going on for quite a while. The responsibilities of business and the responsibilities back to shareholders versus the responsibility back to society, and what role does business play in the bigger field of life. And I think that's where we get to the next point, which is crisis. What is it about the crisis that we're facing today that makes it more than a crisis or different to any other crisis that we've faced before? And I think what we see is that COVID-19 is a crisis that has evolved at unprecedented speed and scale. And it is creating a universal imperative for governments and organizations to take immediate action to protect their citizens. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can see out of this crisis, is just how quickly it is evolving on a day-to-day basis. So we've been doing a number of presentations to our clients and been trying to keep up with the information. So once I think we make a presentation one week, or we present some data, a new set of data comes out a week later, and a new set of data comes out a week later, making that old data either redundant or needed to be able to put that data in new context. So I think one of the things is really agility, and being able to act and respond at speed, and being able to keep up with the sheer volume of information has become really, really important, and more important than ever before. Because we do hear about agility in marketing and being able to respond, and I think being able to respond at time is really important right now. We know also that this is the biggest global event and challenge of our lifetimes. I don't know the age of the panel of people who are listening right at the moment. I'm 40 years old myself, so I lived through in my professional life a recession in 2008 to 2009. We've lived through a tsunami and some natural disasters, but I think this is a global event and challenge that it really is unprecedented. And as such, it's really changing human attitudes and behaviors like never before, and is also forcing organizations to respond. And I think the word forcing is really important, because we're not able to stick our heads in the sand. Businesses are now an essential part of the overall response to this crisis. And I'll take you through some examples moving forward, because I think it's not just a crisis, it has started to feel like a test. So not only do we need to draw on everything that we've learned to deal with in a pandemic and its aftermath, we're starting to have to learn new skills from lessons that have never been taught. So how businesses and leaders respond is a central part of the story playing out in front of us. So I think it's really important, again, is how we are responding, not just are we making a response. And that response is being judged publicly more than ever before. If we look back to other crises, we know that crisis does accelerate change. And I think that's where we can see that some of the changes that are being made today by both businesses and consumers and human beings and institutions will stay with us for a long time. So we saw out of World War II economic empowerment emerge. We saw from the SARS epidemic, e-commerce as a phenomenon emerge as well. Out of another health crisis, it being AIDS, we saw safe sex and new behavior emerge. So I think the big question on everyone's minds are, what new behaviors will emerge out of COVID-19, and which ones will stay with us for the long term? And I think there's some indications of what types of behaviors will stick, particularly on behalf of businesses. And I think that points to the fact that COVID-19 elevates the social impact of every business and throws a spotlight on the nature of our companies and the character of our brands. And what we mean by this, and I'll take you through a couple of data points which I think were interesting and might shed light on the types of changes that businesses need to make, because as we came into the crisis, business and responsible decision making were actually becoming equally important. So in a recent study, just before we came into this crisis, actually, a study by Accenture on CEO behavior pointed to, I think, two interesting sides of the coin. So one, I think, was around the fact that, you know, companies heading into an economic crisis felt that they weren't as prepared as they should be. And we also know that 17% of companies won't survive a crisis. So the economic pressure and the ability to respond financially is really important to be able to survive. I think on the other hand is that the nature of that survival is also changing. So we see that 88% of CEOs believe that our global economic systems need to refocus on equitable growth, and 94% believe that sustainability issues are really important to the future success of our business. So it's not just the ability to survive, it's the ability to thrive in this new environment with alongside a new set of rules that are emerging. And those new sets of rules that are emerging are, I think, being driven in part by consumer choice. So we see that 65% of consumers want businesses to take a stand on issues that are important and close to their heart. And this is even, I think, amplified more when we look towards a younger consumer group. So the 18 to 39-year-olds were 74%. So we see that younger consumers, this is highlighted even more, which I think is important for Asia, where we've got a younger consumer population in general. We also see that 43% of consumers will simply walk away when disappointed by a brand's words or actions on a social issue. So I think consumers are demanding that businesses be more responsible and act more responsibly as well, which I think is a really important point that we need to understand, that purpose is being driven on behalf of the choices that the consumers are making. So I think the global corporate response to COVID-19 is, in fact, I think, separating in real time those brands who say nice things we all want to hear from those who do good things that need to be done. And I think, again, really important point, saying nice things versus doing nice things, and not only doing nice things, but doing things that need to be done are really, really important. And it's where businesses, those brands who are rising to the top and being talked about and will be remembered through this crisis, and those who are making a difference, I think will survive and thrive in the future. So I think the big question will be, what did you do during the pandemic? And as we look to those brands who are, as I said, thriving in this situation, I think we can point back to a few key themes. And I think those themes are around, from a marketing standpoint, that it's all about the acts that we do, not the ads that we make. It's about story doing. So actually doing something that's built around a brand story versus just telling them about our brand story. It's more than just being seen. It's about being good. And the other one, I think, is COVID is not a brief, because we've seen a lot of companies responding or scrambling to respond, and I don't think it's born out of irresponsibility or the need to. I think it's born out of the need to respond and not knowing what to do, which sort of companies have treated. So some companies have treated COVID as a brief, but I think it's a bigger problem than that. So it's really COVID as a human issue, and how do we respond to that issue as a business? And what we see is a number of brands who have really stepped up to the plate. And I think what I've done is frame a few of these examples in challenges and looking back retrospectively. So as a business, if you had the ability to convert your production facilities from non-essential to essential goods, did you do that? And I think what we've seen are those brands who did do that achieve a disproportionate share of the conversation. So I think we've all seen the examples of Louis Vuitton shifting their production capacity to make hand sanitizer. It's just one of the companies who have done that, and we've seen lots of other businesses capable of doing that same thing following. So and Anheuser-Busch, L'Oreal, lots of different beauty companies being able to convert production facilities to be able to actually go from what is seen as a non-essential good to producing an essential good. From a communications point of view, there are so many different examples I could point to. I've chosen two. I think, and Maria will talk to you a lot more about Coca-Cola moving forward, but I think it's one of the great examples of making a choice to cancel, reshift or refocus or reinvest communications budget. The other one I've listed here may seem a little bit frivolous, but from a communications point of view, we see KFC. I think finger licking good is, and I understand the investment, the time, the patience to be able to crack such a beautiful historic brand idea and bring that to life, only to have that come to life at the most unopportunistic time, and having to make the decision to pull that, I think, is a big decision to be able to cancel or again reshift or reinvest your communications budget. If you have the ability, or if you have a product that will help those who need it most, did you give those products away? And I think what we've seen, particularly around footwear companies, and we've seen a lot of buzz around particularly Crocs and Allbirds and Clove, which is an emerging healthcare footwear brand, rising to the top of conversations because they've given away their shoes to those who need it most, who are on their feet for 24, 48 hours straight. So if you've got a product that is of need to those in need, are you giving that away? And have you thought about the right mechanisms to get it into their hands in a timely fashion, sorry. Next one is, I think a lot of businesses face a difficult question. do we keep the lights on even when the right thing might be to turn them off? And I think the hotel industry is an interesting example of this, because travel has been one of the most hard hit sectors. So to keep it on and be able to make your rooms available to those, again, who need it most, and keep yourselves available for particularly those who are in quarantine, I think is a really important thing to do moving forward, and will probably hold those businesses in good standing moving forward out of the crisis as well. Next, if you're a service-based business, with everyone completely disrupted in their day-to-day routines by COVID-19, whether you're a student, whether you're a professional. If you have services that are of need and could be helpful to those who need it, did you open up access to those services to help ease the disruption to the population? And I think most importantly, did you protect profits, or did you protect your most important assets as a business? And I think this is really important, is around how did you treat your employees? Because I think employees being the most valuable asset of a business is, did you cut jobs, or did you sacrifice profit to try and keep those people employed for as long a period as possible? Because the other interesting, I think, statistic that's recently come out of what is now probably a very famous study, being the Edelman Trust Barometer, is that 62% of employees are now putting their trust in employers to give them and respond with timely information, and putting faith in their employers as a reliable source of information on what to do, how to do, and how to move forward through this crisis, even more so than they do government agencies, healthcare companies, and traditional media sources or social media. So I think the trust that your employees are giving you sort of puts a responsibility back on employers to show them the same sort of respect and trust moving forward. So all really big questions. I think very difficult for us to know what to do, or how to know what to do moving forward, because again, as we said, this crisis is really unprecedented. So I think based on a few learnings, based on everything that we've seen so far, I think there's 5, I think, interesting points on how do we know what to do moving forward. And I think we can point to the first one, is that we've all spent time building our organizational values. Let's now take them off the wall and use them as a guidebook of what we should do for our employees and for our consumers and for our stakeholders moving forward. Secondly is plan ahead, I think, for a brand marathon. What we mean by this is that, yes, we need to respond immediately. Yes, we need to be agile. We need to be able to respond to immediate shifts in behavior, in how the pandemic is unfolding. I think, but more importantly, I think, as we've seen during times of crisis, change will stick with us for the long term. So how we behave as a brand and how we integrate this thinking into our brand values is really important. And I think that's what we mean by planning ahead for a brand marathon. Thirdly, find metrics that truly matter. We know as marketers, we often face or focus on metrics that provide us with immediate feedback on performance and sales, clicks, click-through rates, leads, conversion rates. How can we complement these measures with measures that are a little bit more human? Love your employees, which we've talked about, and listen and observe and focus on, I think, human insights, because how we treat human beings and how we focus on the social impact, I think, is just as important now, is going to be important now as it is moving forward into the future. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Maria, because I think she's got some really interesting examples of how a business which has been known for social responsibility has responded in a time that is truly difficult for all of us. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Kris. So we're over
Thank
to
you.
Teejay now.
Teejay, just one short message to everybody. Please post your questions in the control panel. We'll try and get to the questions at the end of the session. And do mention your name and your designation and the company name so that we have the context of the question. So with that, let me introduce Teejay to you. She's going to take us through the rest of the webinar.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jessica, Rohit, for the invitation. It's great to be here. I hope you can see the screen and the audio is coming through well. And I hope that you're all doing well as well, staying safe as we navigate this crisis together. Today, I will be sharing with you some lessons in marketing at a time of crisis. Some of them are quite similar to what Kris has shared. But remember, Rohit also mentioned this, there is no playbook for crisis, just lessons. And I hope you find these lessons helpful. Some of them are operational in nature. It is true, you cannot plan for a crisis, right? There's a saying that goes, you can't plan from a crisis, but you can always use the lessons to overcome crisis and build resilience around your business so you can protect yourself for future similar crises. I myself have undergone a lot of crisis in the business. I am Filipino, and if you know the Philippines, we face at least 20 typhoons a year, a lot of earthquakes, and from time to time volcanic eruptions. So, I mean, obviously, the crisis is not as big as the scale of this pandemic. As a company also, Coca-Cola has been in existence for more than 130 years. It's actually our birthday on Friday. So the company has also undergone many man-made and some natural disasters, including smaller epidemics like SARS and MERS. And so those are the inspirations by which I took these lessons. So you've probably seen this before, these two characters, Chinese characters, and I just use this because this crisis originated in China, and the word crisis in Chinese is made up of two characters. The first character says danger, and the next character says opportunity. So crisis is twofold. We are facing this crisis. Yes, it's very dangerous. We're having a hard time, but also great opportunities open up for crisis. If you don't know, the early editions of Alibaba, which is one of the most valued companies in the world, was born after the SARS crisis. So yes, what are the lessons in marketing that we can mine so that we overcome the dangers and maximize the opportunities? So just 4 lessons. The first one being, listen to the humans. Okay, this is not my original line. This is a line that's often used by a current CMO, Manolo Arroyo. He says, listen to the humans. And who are the humans we should be listening to in a time of crisis. The first set of humans are our employees, and Kris touched upon this earlier. Our friends from Kantar actually did a study in March, and yes, employees do worry about their health, and they want to use digital communication tools at work. But why is it important to listen to our employees? Of course, because they make our business run, our plants, they deliver our products and services, they produce the marketing work. But also, we have to remember that our employees are our first marketing mouthpiece. We cannot be responsible marketers if we're not responsible employers. So our employees are our first and most intimate social media influencers. So what are they concerned about, or what were they concerned about during the COVID crisis? First is the physical safety, right? What is physical safety? Is the office safe? Do we have essential staff that need to be there? Are security measures in place? Do we provide PPEs? How about sanitation and social distancing measures, right? For those who can work from home, right? Do we have that option? Are we given equipments? Does the company help me pay for my data subscription? So those are the things that guarantee physical safety. The other dimension of safety is psychological safety. Are we giving our employees some flexibility for time so they can also attend to their personal needs in this time of crisis? And obviously, Kris touched upon this as well, is about job security. They worry about that. So what are we doing to kind of help quell their fears about job security? So first, humans we listen to are our employees. The second set of humans we listen to is our extended families. And these are our suppliers, our partners, our agency partners for companies like ours, right? We work with a lot of research agencies and ad agencies. They have humans too, who have physical safety needs as well as psychological safety needs. He touched upon our decision earlier to divert the ad spend to community activities, and that is something that we should be communicating to our agencies, right? What are we doing now and what are we doing in the future? There are things that we need to decide about our business that impact their business. So it should always be a dialogue. They're not always the happiest conversations. I myself don't enjoy those conversations, but they are in the same boat as we are. So how can we find a solution that works for both our companies so that we all could overcome the crisis? Because on happy days, we need each other. And that's why in times like these, we should also help each other. So it shouldn't be a one-way conversation. So these are the first two humans that we listen to. But of course, we also need to listen to our end users or our consumers, right? We need to know what is happening in the market. And just reflecting on what has happened in Vietnam, as early as February 4, and I really commend your government for taking swift action on this, school closing in the key cities as early as February 4. And the situation for our business then is we were coming from the heels of a very successful TED campaign, one of our most successful TED campaigns in a very long time. And we were geared up to run, a campaign, a back to school campaign, and then reprise our very successful Coke Food Fest program. But then we already knew as early as Feb 4 and Feb 13 that many people, or the students at least, would be spending their time at home. And therefore it needs a quick calibration. We could have gone ahead with our plans. After all, we had already spent so much time and money on those plans. In fact, some materials have already been produced and deployed. But listening to the humans would tell us there would be less people outside the house, and it would be irresponsible to hold large gatherings of people. And so what we did was we overhauled the plan in February, right? We actually beefed up our e-commerce platform as well as aired a Coke at Home campaign that was already there. So it's an overhaul in 2 weeks, which also meant as marketers, we should act fast, right? We shouldn't be bogged down by our processes and make sure that we respond to what is happening in the market. The next thing that happened is that, yeah, cases have been treated successfully, so we were happy about that. But then sometime in March, cases again were increasing. And thanks to our partners in research agencies always giving us information, we know that the Vietnamese are taking the dangers of this disease seriously than most other markets. We also know that they were willing to accept quarantines to manage the risks. So there are actually a lot of sources of information that's available. Of course, some of them need to be paid, but some of them are actually free. Of course, they're not the deep dives, they're not double clicks, but they could give you clues already on what's happening to the market out there. We also have our own listening tools, Coca-Cola social listening tools, and we listen every day. And COVID was one of the most talked about things for a very long time. We've never had this much buzz on a topic before. And it allowed us to understand what are their top concerns at that time. We also have, aside from our social listening tools, we also had access to some studies from our friends from Kantar. And what we're realizing is people didn't want to be marketed to. They did not want or need brand messages. They did not want to be sold anything. They were looking for information, right? And they were looking for positive perspectives. So at this time, you know that this may not be the right time to talk about, my brand personality. If this is what the consumers or the people are needing, we need to step back and see how we can help them with that. And they don't want brands to exploit COVID-19 to promote their brand. But we also need to keep listening because people will not be in a state of panic forever, right? When cases flatten or decrease, they will feel a sense of release. And then they will start opening up to brand messages. Vietnam is one of the first countries to get out of lockdown. And we can see that people are starting to go out, although not with the same traffic as before the crisis. But, people are going back to work. Soon classes will open. And we need to keep listening because they will have different needs at this time. We need to keep being sensitive and alert because we know that in some countries like Singapore, Germany, and Sweden, the cases have flattened only to have a second wave of infection. So we still need to be very, very sensitive. So we're hoping that we will arrive at a stage in Vietnam where we will achieve, a new kind of normal, and this will require another set of communication. So that's the first lesson. Listen to the humans. The second lesson is leverage the networks, right? Some of the problems we are facing may have already been overcome by someone else. So there are many networks you can leverage from. In our case, the internal networks, Coca-Cola is present in 206 countries, and I'm sure there are people in the call who also have branches in other locations. Some of them may be in the advanced stages of COVID, and you can use their learnings in order to help anticipate also what you can do in your market. So for example, for us, China is providing early learnings about what Coca-Cola can expect in markets as they graduate from outbreak phase to a time of reopening. You can also leverage industry networks. So whether you are a big or small company, you can always get a little help. I remember a wise leader of a very influential international organization. His name is Pope John Paul II. He said, nobody is so poor that he has nothing to give, and nobody is so rich that he has nothing to receive. So even multinationals like us benefit from public studies given by our friends from the research communities. So there's so many out there. We just need to be, subscribing to these networks. And if you don't have your own social listening tools, I believe that there are many organizations, in fact, within MMA, that provide you with information at whatever cost you can afford. There are many solutions to be able to do this. If we can't do physical field work, there are ways of doing it online. So leverage your industry networks. The third one is other partners. So I know in Vietnam, we've partnered a lot with AmCham and the Red Cross, especially in our community efforts. I also know of other partnerships of Coca-Cola around the globe, like in Indonesia and my native country, the Philippines, I am aware that there is a partnership between Coca-Cola and Unilever in helping small businesses get back on their feet. So, you don't have to do it alone. There are many companies who may have similar objectives as you. And if you pull in our resources together, there's more things that we can do. So that's lesson number 2, leverage the networks. Lesson number 3 is be true. Be consistent with who you are. So we are Coca-Cola company. We make delicious, refreshing, and nutritious beverages. We offer a wide range of products from our beloved Coca-Cola, which helps enhance the meals at home, to NutriBoost. These are things I know, right? I know that NutriBoost has zinc, calcium, Fusty has antioxidants, as well as, Tepi. And these are beverages we produce. And we know that there is a need for these things also at this time. Now, there are many other things that people need at this time, right? Kris has shown you examples of a footwear company giving footwear. We know that people want to be informed about washing hands and sanitizing practices and medical things. But we are not the best company to talk about that. Maybe if we were a soap company, we would be the best people to talk about that. So we talk about what we know. We know Coca-Cola, we know beverages. We know that Coca-Cola is also an icon of togetherness. And so in some of our markets, we talked about social distancing. So you've probably seen in your networks an example that was implemented in many of our markets. This is a billboard in Times Square where we encourage people to stay social distance, right? Stay at home. Because right now, staying apart is the best way to stay together. So this is the thing that we talk about. So I guess what I'm saying is you talk about the things that are natural to your products, your service, or your company. Another thing that is natural to us is our purpose. We did say that our purpose as a company is refresh the world and make a difference. And we had thought that at this time of COVID, the balance should probably be more on the second sentence than the first sentence. We are now challenged to bring this make a difference purpose into action, which leads me to my fourth and last lesson for today, which is do before say, or as Kris referred to it earlier, story doing before storytelling. Especially in the first phase of the crisis, consumers did not want to be marketed to. So brands are called to do things more than say. And that's why in March, we have decided to stop commercial ads and redivert our monies to buying personal protective equipment, and of course, beverages to all our frontline workers. And the example that was shown earlier was in the Philippines, and you would be proud to say that we actually launched at the same time as the Philippines. Maybe they just got more traction because they use the English language, but the Vietnam team here, the Red Cross and the AmCham really acted with speed so we can respond to the needs of the market immediately. And I thank them for their partnership. In some locations, we allowed our partners to use our assets to say important messages. So in Cambodia and Thailand, they used our trucks to be able to say messages of staying at home to people who were still going out. But again, like I said, we should keep listening to the humans, right? And what we're seeing is across the world, people have the same feeling. It doesn't matter if you're Vietnamese or American, if you're a boy or a girl or whatever your faith group is, the feeling of fear, panic, anxiety is universal. And the problem is, as human beings, when we're afraid, we always want to come together. But then everybody else is telling us to social distance. And so there's that tension that's going on in humans. And we felt like Coke had a role to play in making people believe that even if times are tough now, we need to believe and keep faith in humanity to be able to overcome this crisis. And that's why over the weekend, we launched a film well, we launched a campaign starting with a film saluting the heroes of the human race. And this is not an advertising campaign, at least not in Southeast Asia and Vietnam. This is something that we produced to pay tribute to the heroes of the human race. And we posted it at the Coca-Cola page last May 1, and it gained a lot of traction. Over the next couple of days, you will see us paying tribute to these actual faces that you're seeing now as a silhouette, including our very own heroes. And so while we are not using media advertising for now, we didn't say we will not do it forever. Like I said, we will keep listening to the humans. But right now, a lot of efforts are being done below the line. And I guess this is another call, right? That we should remove our marketing paradigm of just marketing is above the line. There's so many things we can do below the line, communicating to our consumers at the point of sale and beefing up our e-commerce platforms. But that won't be the last of our activities, right? Because, you know, what's next? People, as they start moving out of their homes, will want to do familiar activities. They will seek comfort food, comfort activities, and beverages. Of course, they will be more cautious because they will continue to have health and safety fears. And how do we help them manage the economic impact of crisis to their personal finances? So for sure, this is not the last you'll hear of us this year, because we will keep listening and responding and letting consumers take the lead. So in summary, marketing responsibly in a time of crisis is fundamentally actually not much different from marketing at any other time, except that things need to be done with more agility, and we should not be chained by our own processes. At any given time, most especially during crisis time, we should always listen to the humans, leverage our networks, be true and be consistent to who we are and what we are, and do before say. So those are the 4 things that I'm meaning to share with you, and thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Teejay and Kris. So now we'll get to the Q&A section. So one of the first questions that we have is a question to Kris. Kris, the question is, what would you suggest for SMEs with limited budget and tremendously affected revenues to market responsibly? What would be some ideas that you would suggest to them?
Okay, that's a really tough question, especially for SMEs, because we know that I think SMEs have probably been the most affected sector, particularly in Vietnam, by this COVID crisis. So I think really the first step is to ensure the financial security of the business. And I think from talking to some different colleagues, small business owners, is to open, like Maria said, an honest dialogue with suppliers, landlords, stakeholders, and see what you can do to negotiate to ensure the safety of your business, your employees, and your supply chain as well. From a communication point of view, it's probably a little bit difficult without knowing the particular sector. But I think, again, back to the principles, it's possibly looking forward and asking yourself the question, not what should I communicate, but how can I help based on my current expertise? And I think there's a really interesting example to point to in Vietnam, which has done extremely well and has received a lot of attention over the last month or so, and that's ABC Bakery for their initiative in being able to include dragon fruit as a new ingredient in their baking process. So I think this is a great example of taking a product that was unable to be exported, utilizing that excess demand of that product or and then being able to integrate that into their product line. And it has received an enormous amount of attention via social media, and has also helped to increase their sales in a time of crisis. So I think innovation, new product development, leaning back on your expertise is probably the best thing that you can do in the short term to help survive.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So there's the next question is really to Teejay. Teejay, the question is, while Coca-Cola is trying to listen to people, and both internal and external, what are the key advice? What is the key advice to your partners who you intend to work with or continue to work with in days to come, and how will that relationship change?
Our advice to partners is for us to keep talking and keep the communication lines open. Speaking for our company, like I said, we've gone through a lot of crisis, and we're very optimistic that we'll get over this. And so there are many bumps that we have along the road this year. There will be a lot of pains. I'm not gonna lie about that, because both our partners and ourselves need to make sure that we also protect our business, so we have something to come back to. And so just keep an open dialogue, I guess, and be willing to take some of the pain that goes along with it, because we do believe that we have fundamentals in place to be able to bounce back. We have belief in not just our capability, but we also have belief in the market. And there are a lot of signals that tell us that Vietnam can recover. And so, yes, this year may be painful, but we are optimistic that next year will be way better and we can recover.
So,
or maybe, and another one would be like, if you think there is an information that we haven't found out yet, just keep sharing information as well. And the more we share information with each other, the more we can help each other.
On that point, the next question from Han is, will these presentations be shared with the audience later on? I don't have the answer, so I would like both of you to please let us know if we can share these presentations. Kris?
Yes, of course. Happy to share, and also happy to continue a dialogue. If anyone wants to add me, I'm available on LinkedIn. Please do add me, and we can continue a conversation. Happy to do that.
Great.
Yeah, we'll share with Jessica as well. Just one final clearance internally, and then it should be up in the MMA website, and I think MMA will let you know where you can access as well.
So as a process, we will send a survey out after this webinar, and then once we have the presentation, the PDF version of these presentations will be available for anybody who wants to download from the MMA website. And the webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the webinar website of MMA. So in case if anybody has missed out, or anybody wants their partners, their colleagues, etc., to look at it, they can go back. So in the interest of time, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Teejay and Kris for their time today, for sharing some of the best practices of responsible marketing, and how a leading brand like Coca-Cola is also dealing with these challenges. To sign off, I just wanted to remind everybody there are many ways to interact and engage with MMA, starting from our newsletter, which is the Smart Brief. We are available on all social media, MM Mobile Marketing Association, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. We do have the FAQ section. As I said at the beginning, we do develop a lot of best practices, white papers, and content. And I would request all of you to log on to MMA if you want any of those reports, something that both Kris and Teejay rightly said. There's a lot of information that can be shared. In fact, we've launched a section on our site called the COVID and how does that help? How do marketers take advantage of COVID? There's a section on the MMA website. I would encourage all of you to participate and engage with us. And if you do have any questions, please do send us those questions. Quick reminder of the upcoming webinars. Please do log in, scan this QR code, and log in and be able to join. With that, once again, I'd like to thank esteemed speakers for their participation and the audience for sticking along. And I hope you found this useful. Thank you once again. Stay home, stay safe for us in Singapore, but for all of you, please take precautions and wear your mask when you are out. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, speaker. Goodbye.
Goodbye.